So in a nutshell, basically there's a bunch of Chinese people that are called Han, and then there's another group of Chinese people called Uyghurs, and the Han Chinese are treating the Uyghur Chinese badly. This, of course, is an understatement.
Yo, Pierre, you wanna come out here?
Nani? The Chinese government is currently holding over 3 million of their own citizens in concentration camps. And it's kind of shocking to me because I'm just finding this out, and it's been going on for about 5 years. I can be forgiven because this is sort of happening outside of my rotoscope. So I had to really search and look some things up, and there's a great article on Vox that gives a lot of details about what's going on and gets you kind of caught up on everything that's happening. For you to really understand the depth and gravity of the situation, you first have to understand two things. One, where the is Xinjiang? And two, the Xinjiang people. Xinjiang is on the west side of China, and it shares the border with Afghanistan and a bunch of Turkish type countries all on that west side. And since their inception, they have created sort of a camaraderie and a family type tradition, and it's closely linked with those Turkish type countries, which created a massive Muslim population. Back in 1933, Xinjiang's population consisted of nearly 80% Muslim. Also in 1933, because of their close ties to those Muslim roots, they tried to form a separatist group and a republic that crashed and burned within the course of that same year. In an effort to control the area, China sent more of the Han population into Xinjiang. And by 1950, we saw a very stark difference where Xinjiang's population of Muslims dropped from 80% nearly down to 40%, and the Han population grew. But this influx of new citizenship also brought a division in class, because Han Chinese were given more promotions and better jobs than Xinjiang natives. This tension boiled up for 20 years and finally overflowed, leading to 200 people dying during a mass protest where the Han Chinese took over in mass proportion their area, slaughtering anyone in the street and creating the first eyesore in this issue that drew global attention. Now, you're probably thinking, like, why are two people who look dead alike? That was racist. But really, why are they fighting? What happened on the West Coast that is making the East Coast uneasy? As you start to look at the map and the geographic plane, you start to realize that 80% of China's export and import runs through Xinjiang. Therefore, them trying to separate or them being a little rebellious may result in an economical crisis for China, as they control 80% of the land. China wasn't about to let their economic situation become unstable just because of a few rebellious citizens. So in an effort to maintain and control that area, they did exactly what any fascist government would do. They took control by force. These small factories look like schools or housing complexes or just general buildings, but when you get up close and you start to see exactly what's hiding behind those walls, you start to see prisons instead of schools. You start to see people having their human rights trampled upon. As early as 2017, we started to hear stories about people being trapped inside of these camps. The ones that managed to escape or get off because they had been considered reformed started to tell their story on the national scale. Horrific stories about people being stacked on top of each other, left to die, people being tortured, children being taken away from their parents. We as Americans know what that's like. Because they were no longer considered citizens of their country, they were considered public enemy number one. This has an echo of a very eerie situation that I wasn't alive for. But they weren't with me when they said history repeats itself. So then the question becomes, what now? Pay attention. What can we do to help these people out? The US government is of no use to us because this is our president.
You know, I'm like a smart person.
I know. I still cry at night about it. And because there are no more adults in the White House that have common sense, we have a Secretary of State who calls these concentration camps are just re-educational centers to stop extreme terrorism. You know, we've heard of this before. Remember when a bunch of Republicans thought that gay conversion therapy existed and they proceeded to torture and use shock therapy to try and get people to stop liking something they like? Okay. America isn't the powerhouse it used to be, so we can rely on the UN, right? No, don't do it. They are still politely asking the Chinese government to reform and actually give them some evidence to use against the Chinese government to write up laws and sanctions against the Chinese government. Because China plays such a massive role in the global economy of this whole entire world, it is almost impossible to touch them. For example, there are neighboring countries who are predominantly Muslim who can't do anything because they have said outright, China owns our debt. What are we going to do? Fight them so they can then stop all money flow into our country? We would cease to exist. And when that type of power goes unchecked, it leads to something tragic. It leads to this abuse of power. It leads to you taking your own citizens and putting them in concentration camps just because of a belief. That sounds eerily familiar. Dare I say Hitlerish? What do? What can we do? Well, the first thing we can do is there's a great foundation that is actively working on this and helping to expose the Chinese government for what they are. I've put the link in the description below, and all the information down there is pertinent. If you want to do something, if you want to find a cause that's worth fighting for, why not fight for, stopping people from being eradicated from the earth? I think that's a very noble cause. You can call your congressman or congresswoman and explain to them how dissatisfied you are with America's response to this situation, because if there's ever been a crisis at a border, I think this is it. But an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, right? Someone said that. That person was way cooler than I am, and they probably said it way better. The last thing that I think we could really do to help, jar up emotion to get this situation resolved in the most peaceful manner is remember what happened when we didn't get involved and the destruction that came with it. There's 3 million people being forced into concentration camps, and the Chinese propaganda coming from the government is that they're trying to stop Muslim extremists. This is simply not true and not the best way to go about it. And this is the irony of the situation. In your effort to be evil, you are only creating more evil that will only come back to hurt you. I'm not speaking for anyone that's been in a concentration camp, but I think it's fair to assume that if I ever got out of a concentration camp and I knew the person that did this to me, there's no way in hell I wouldn't find a way to exact the pain that I received onto them. These concentration camps aren't helping anybody. They're creating the next terrorists. These are all steps taken by Nazi Germany. So once again, we are seeing history repeat itself, and we're not taking the necessary steps to stop it.
Roaches love the heat.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this video. I greatly appreciate it. It was so much fun doing this. It's been a while since I got to record. Let me know what you think. I'm honestly interested. Comment, like, share, subscribe. I greatly appreciate you guys. Take care.